When I was growing up in the 90s, I had two distinct nightmares about witches, both of which are kind of invoked in The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, where one of the three distinct timelines takes place in 1998. And yet, those are not the most disquieting parts of the book for me. And like I said, in this novel, we are following three different timelines that are kind of centered or anchored by Minerva in 1998, who is doing her graduate thesis on a novel called The Vanishing. And this leads her into some explorations of witchcraft in relation to the novel and Beatrice, the author of the novel, whose manuscript she finds that is kind of recounting the story of the disappearance of her friend Jenny, who inspired the novel, The Vanishing, at the same time as this idea of witches and witchcraft starts to come into play, especially as Minerva starts to see signs of witchcraft in her daily life. She is drawn back and reminded of the stories that she used to be told by her great-grandmother, I believe it was great-grandmother Alba, whose point of view in 1908 we also get as her family is slowly being rumored by the community to be cursed as misfortune after misfortune starts to befall them. But this perceived curse may not even be the scariest part of that timeline. And so we have these three young women who are kind of connected or united by this commonality of exploring the idea of witchcraft in these different periods and how this folklore and the danger and idea of danger of witches kind of permeated and the mutation of the folklore over the years, but also the way that witches are a kind of stand-in here. We are exploring and kind of trying to return witches to a thing that should be feared, but it also wouldn't be a Silvia Moreno-Garcia novel if the supernatural also didn't stand in for some of the decaying of society in some ways, or some of the dangers that may lurk a little closer to the surface or a little more obviously without the supernatural there, but the idea of the supernatural exacerbating it and making it even more malicious and dangerous. And even as I would have loved to explore both the folklore of witches and the differences of the folklore of the witches in all three timelines, as well as get a little bit more about Beatrice's book, The Vanishing, that inspires Minerva so much, I think that the way these timelines kind of interact with each other and are paced in combination with each other is done really well. As always with Silvia Moreno-Garcia, it is incredibly and compulsively readable, but there are some parts here that are disquieting with or without the witches.